Hey everyone, my name is Erica Pierce. I will be doing my 2020 contribution presentation for my Salisbury University Social Work 306 class on Mrs. Janie Porter Barrett. I apologize that some of my images aren't directly related to Mrs. Barrett, but I do believe they help to illustrate her life in an accurate manner. Janie Porter Barrett was born Janie Porter on August 9, 1865 in Athens, Georgia. Janie was believed to be born from an interracial relationship. Her mother was a former slave, and while her father is unnamed, he is believed to be a Caucasian man due to Janie's fair skin tone. Janie's mother worked as a live-in housekeeper for the Skinner family. The Skinners gave Janie an advantage on other African Americans of her time by teaching her literature and mathematics. Janie's mother met and married a railroad worker and moved away from the Skinner home. Janie continued to reside with the Skinners even after her mother had moved out. Mrs. Skinner wanted to adopt Janie and send her to live in the North where she could easily live as a white person. Janie's mother took great offense to this and instead sent Janie to live at the Hampton Institute in Hampton, Virginia, where she could gain knowledge of the black community. Up until now, Janie had only lived and learned from white people. At the Hampton Institute, Janie had to perform manual labor for the first time in her life. The focus of this institute was to teach girls about morality and housekeeping. Their main purpose was to prepare these girls for their futures as domestics or housewives. This is also where Janie had first learned of her love for volunteer work. The Hampton Institute also trained Janie to be an elementary school teacher. They also instilled great values in her by teaching her about love of race, love of fellow man, and love of country. In result, she gained strong patriotic values and sense of duty towards her race. She graduated from the Institute in 1885. After graduating, Janie worked as a teacher from 1886 to 1889. During this time, she also married Mr. Harris Barrett, whom was employed at the Hampton Institute as a bookkeeper and cashier. They had 4 children together. Mr. Barrett made enough money to support the family, but Janie had too strong a desire for social service work to be a stay-at-home mom. In 1890, Janie started the Locust Street Settlement House. Locust Street House was the first settlement house for blacks in the United States. It was also the first of its kind in Virginia. Janie's settlement house was closely modeled after Jane Addams' Hall House in Chicago, Illinois. The Locust Street Social Settlement began by Janie opening her home to a few girls a week. It started out helping just a few women at a time, but as time went on, Janie felt the desire to help even more women. Mr. Barrett then got involved and helped Janie open the official Locust Street Settlement House in 1902. The settlement house was built in a predominantly black neighborhood in Hampton, Virginia. The house was initially established to help girls and women become good homemakers and to improve the social life of the community. The house consisted of 1 female resident, 1 male resident, 16 female volunteers, 4 male volunteers, and Mrs. Barrett herself, who was the head resident. The settlement house had clubs for women, boys, lectures, and general social work. They started a playground, library, and encouraged many athletic games. They also held cooking classes, sewing lessons, paperwork lessons, gardening, stenciling, beadwork, quilt work, excursions, picnics, and much, much more. Mrs. Barrett is quoted for saying, "We are teaching through the efforts of the settlement house how to have more attractive homes, cleaner backyards, more attractive front yards, cleaner sidewalks, how to have better gardens, how to raise poultry successfully, the proper food for the family, care and feeding of infants and small children. Through the efforts of the house, much has been done to improve the social life of the community." Mrs. Barrett began to work on and form alliances with leaders of white women's organizations in Virginia. She also formed an alliance with white social reformers such as Jane Addams. Mrs. Addams even held a Chicago Tea Party at Hall House in 1911 to recognize Mrs. Barrett and all of her amazing accomplishments in the black community. In 1915, with the help of the Virginia State Federation of Colored Women's Club, Janie founded the Virginia Industrial School for Colored Girls. The main focus of this institution was to develop Christian character. Mrs. Barrett thought it was crucial to use reward systems rather than punishment to promote good behavior. She wanted it to feel like a home and not a prison. Many of the activities of this school revolved around building agricultural and household skills along with cleanliness. The majority of these girls coming into the facility were dependents or delinquent colored girls who have recently been released from prison and paroled to the school. At this point in time, there were no foster homes for colored girls, so the only other alternative they had for care was jail. A good amount of the girls entering the school were considered to be feeble-minded. Some also carried many infectious diseases. Mrs. Barrett made it her personal mission to teach these young ladies self-direction and character-building skills. The end goal for these girls was to be paroled to a private family and work for normal wages. Until this point, Virginia's state legislature only provided funds for similar Caucasian establishments. Mrs. Barrett spent much time trying to find resources for her school. By forming her earlier stated alliances within the white community, she was able to accomplish this and transform her school into an amazing place that was able to change the lives of many African American girls. Mrs. Barrett became a very influential woman of her time. Before the Civil War had even occurred, she used her position in society to advocate for the black community. She put her influence to great use by advocating black voting and participation in government. By 1920, the school had achieved national recognition. In 1929, she was presented with the William E. Harmon Award for Distinguished Achievement amongst Negroes. In 1930, she participated in the White House Conference on Child Health and Protection. She was also president of the Virginia State Federation of Colored Women's Club for 25 years, along with holding a chair on the executive board for the National Association of Colored Girls for 4 years. Sadly, Mrs. Barrett retired in 1940 and then passed away just 8 short years later. Mrs. Barrett passed away on August 27, 1948. She lived well into her 80s and dedicated most of her life to helping others. Her hard work and compassion has set a great example and paved the way for many great leaders and activists that followed. Mrs. Barrett was so influential for her time that she is still recognized today. 2 years after her passing, the Virginia General Assembly named the Hanover County School the Janie Porter Barrett School for Girls. It was racially integrated in 1965. The Virginia Industrial School exists today as the Barrett Learning Center. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you find it useful.